I will never forget being about halfway through my college career studying business management, and I was sitting on the porch in a rocking chair with some friends alongside me. We were all kind of doing different class homework at the same time, enjoying a nice afternoon together, getting things done. And I just stopped and looked up and said, why do we not have the option to major in home management? I was studying business management, but the Lord was really starting to reveal to me that deep down in my heart of hearts, all I wanted to be was a homemaker. However, at the time I had no significant other or any kind of idea as to how I would provide for myself at that point. But it occurred to me, like, that's all that I want to do. I want to be the manager of a home, and I want to know how to do it well. In retrospect, I do realize that it probably was not an issue with the courses my institution was offering. Rather, it was a struggle within my own heart of whether I should have even been in college or not. But it did end up leading to me meeting my husband on campus and us getting married. So it all worked out in the end. And I realized that a university system cannot put the expectation on a particular program to earn them money if the program itself is going to send graduates out into the world, which often, in most cases, for this type of occupation, do not make money with the work that they're doing. The point, however, remains the same, that there is a lot of complexities and system processes which take place within the management of a home, and many of us, including myself, have no clue where to start. I oftentimes get slightly frustrated when people say that they tried staying home but they just couldn't do it. They got bored, or this, that, and the other. And I just cannot wrap my head around that, because I think what it really boils down to is maybe there was a sense of paralysis because there was so much to do. There wasn't an understanding of where to start, and they just didn't take the first step, and so they just kind of sat in that paralysis and got bored from that. And that is 100% understandable. So that's why I am here today, because I want to share with you how we plan for a month of meals, a month of grocery buying, a month of grocery storing for our family of 4. I'll be working off of the monthly meal plan and grocery list, which you can find for free on my website, meganblakelie.com. I have it linked down below. Okay, so I have just gotten back home from picking up groceries for the month. It's painful when ordering and paying, but it really does tend to save us more in the long run. And I also am fully aware that maybe not everyone can do a monthly grocery order, so I totally understand that. But for us as a family, personally, it just saves us a lot of money in the long run if we do it all at once. Hopefully we will not have to make many runs to the dollar store. That's really what gets us, because each run ends up being like $20 or $30, even if you're just going for a couple of ingredients. That's really where the problem is. So I am about to get to putting all of it away. Whenever you get this size of an order, the question is always, well, where in the world am I going to put all that? And we do not have great storage in our house. If you've been around, then you know this. In previous houses, like in the last house that we lived in, we had a basement that was like it was unfinished, but it was the whole square footage of like each level of our house. It was an entire basement. And it was full of junk. Like at the time, we had just started bulk purchasing foods. And so we didn't really have a huge use for it as like a cellar. But if I could go back, like if I was where I am now in kitchen organization and like systems and processes around my home and had that type of setup, that would be ideal. But we don't, so we have to get kind of creative. I don't know if or when we will ever move from this house, so this is what we will most likely be working with for quite some time. But if we ever do move, or when we ever do move, it will be on my list that we have some kind of better storage for everything, but especially for food. There are so many ways to be creative about this, though, like even beyond what I'm doing. I know that there are more ways, if I absolutely had to, that I could find space like under my bed and different things like that for dry goods. But for now, what we have going on, it could be worse, I guess is what I'm saying. For now, what we have is we have our pantry cabinet beside the refrigerator, which I try to just keep like the immediate needs or the ongoing needs in there. And then we have bulk pantry shelving in my master closet, laundry room. That's such a multi-purpose closet. It serves as like our bulk pantry, and I try to keep canned goods, flour, pasta, and sugars in there, as well as just excess bulk. Then in our freezer drawer, I keep the immediate needs as well. But then across the street, or next door across the street at my brother and sister-in-law's house, we share a storage building behind their house that has a chest freezer in it. So I keep all of the duplicates of freezer items in the chest freezer. I also get the like 10-pound roll of meat. You might have seen me, if you were here a few weeks ago, you probably saw me vacuum sealing that, because I get the 10-pound roll and then I go through and divide it out into roughly 1 pound-ish increments, and then vacuum seal it and freeze like 8 of them, and then keep 2, or whatever, just however our meals are looking. But I just wanted to talk through storage, because I think it's so easy to get into the mindset of like, oh, I'm in no way am I going to be able to purchase all of my groceries up front, even if I do have the funding to do so, because I just don't have a place to put it. And so we just really have to be creative. The biggest thing is making sure that you have additional freezer space, because obviously those things you cannot buy in bulk if you don't have a place to put. So there are all the time chest freezers being sold on like Facebook Marketplace. We got the one that my parents had in their basement for a really long time, and they just never used, so they asked if we wanted it, and we said of course. So that would be probably where I'd start if you're struggling with knowing like how to store a large amount of food. To be clear, this is not emergency preparedness food storage. We do have some of that, but at least living where we live, we always want to keep some on hand just in case, but we don't panic buy for that purpose, mostly because we live in Georgia, and especially the last couple of winters have been so mild. Now, like I said, we do keep stuff on hand just in case we were to have a power outage from a freeze or something like that, but typically we aren't out of power for more than a couple of days. That's also what people in North Carolina, South Carolina would have said before this most recent Hurricane Helene came through and wrecked everybody, and I think some of them are still out of power. It was like up to a month that they were anticipating not having power. So your rice, your flour, your beans, your canned meats, those kinds of things, we keep those on hand for sure, but they're not stuff that we use unless we are in an emergency. Everything else, we use what we have, and we have what we use. So we are constantly rotating through the items that are on our bulk shelves. And that way you're not just buying a ton of stuff up that other people might need and then never using it. That's also why I like to do a monthly meal plan, because it keeps me from buying unnecessary items, and it keeps me from, because that's spending my money that I don't need to be spending, or that's taking items from supply that I don't actually need. So for us, this is what I found works best, and this is how we store it. Now, like I said, if I did need more storage, we could potentially set up a whole pantry in our storage building that we share with my brother and sister-in-law that has the chest freezer. We could put tons of shelving in there. If we had a basement or a root cellar, that's exactly what I would want, is just shelves upon shelves for canned goods, for dry goods. I would love to have that much storage, but if it's not convenient enough to access, at least for me, but I think probably for a lot of people, then I'm not going to use it. I will say, oh gosh, but the toddler is sleeping and my older child is occupied and I don't want to leave her home alone long enough to run across the street and all these things like that. I'll just find something that I have here. So that for me is something that is always, I always have to remind myself of. Like if it's not within a few steps of access, then I probably will not be using it. So you're about to see me go in and put away all of this, and it's going to kind of be here, there, and everywhere, but I just wanted you to have an understanding of how we keep this stuff a month at a time until we're ready to use it, and maybe give you some ideas for how you can do that as well. So there's going to be a lot of moving pieces. It's breakfast time. It's babies are all awake. Husband's awake. It's Saturday. We're all home. So we're just going to try to knock this out as a family unit and have fun while we do it.
All right. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
I need to know that your husband tries to flirt with you unsuccessfully every time, but okay.
Something that I have recently discovered in the sense of homemaking in general, but specifically the work of my kitchen, is that the work itself, like the actual physical task, does not drain me so much. I mean, some days, yes, but more often than not, it is the mental capacity that I lack by the time I need to cook dinner. The creativity that I just don't have in me whenever it's time to throw together a meal, which then leads us to just running and picking something up or making something frozen or whatever, that's not quite as nutritional, that's not really going to keep us from being hungry right before bed for another snack anyways. And then if you look at like making a grocery list, that in and of itself, if I'm doing it every single week, requires time and energy and thought, like just so many things. I don't know why it's taken me so long to realize this, but it just makes so much more sense to sit down and knock it all out for the month, to do it all in one go, and then go and pick it up, come home and spend half a day putting it away, organizing it, doing what needs to be done. In the beginning of this video, you saw me cleaning out my fridge. That was the night before I went to pick up these groceries. So then I knew everything in my fridge were things that we were going to be using within the upcoming month. I knew that I would have the space in my fridge for what I was bringing into my home, and I didn't just have unnecessary items sitting around that needed to be thrown out anyways. I have never been the type to do bulk meal planning. I still have no interest in doing that. And when I say bulk meal planning, I mean like taking a whole day of the weekend or a whole weekend itself to just cook meals for the week and then have them ready to go. I personally like my food fresh, and I like more of a variety within my food, so I like to plan different meals during the week but have everything on hand and readily available to then be able to make it each day. And I am not someone that knows how to make her own recipes. Like, I did not grow up learning how to cook from scratch or really even how to cook. I know more now, but especially whenever I first got married and was, making our meals, it was a lot of like just add water, potatoes and things like that, which is totally fine. We made it by just fine with that. And that's nobody's fault, because whenever I was young, I was involved in so many sports, I was hardly ever home. So when I was home, it's not like I was asking somebody to teach me how to cook or, how to buy groceries and make a grocery list. So in my day-to-day life, the brain power doesn't even come from putting a recipe together. It just comes from choosing what recipe to use, because I'm literally just reading off a recipe most nights, unless it's something that I have made over and over again up to this point and I just know how to do it without looking. But most often, if I'm having any kind of variety in our meals for the week, for the month, I am following a recipe off my phone, or if it's been good enough and tried and true enough times, then I'll put it in my go-to recipe book. But I do not waste brain power on, and I don't want to say waste, I just don't have the creativity for recipe making. So I don't even exert brain power towards putting a meal together. It is simply figuring out what meal, figuring out earlier in the day what meats go into that meal in order to then thaw those meats, or if it's a crock pot meal, what needs to be prepped into a crock pot, and the amount of time that it takes for each of these things to be ready when the time comes. And then of course making sure that I have the groceries, the ingredients on hand in order to accomplish said meal. Those are the key factors that will make or break me when it comes to having a meal on the table for my family in the evenings. Getting there. So to sum it up, I guess what I have realized is that homemaking, homekeeping, home management, whatever you want to call it, is just as much administrative as it is actually doing the tasks before you. Like they say, if we fail to plan, then we plan to fail. And while there is definitely room for creativity and so much flexibility, I guess you could say, in and around our homes, certain areas I would definitely argue just require more attention to detail. And one of those is the kitchen. Now, like I said, there are some that are just so naturally gifted in this area and their brain just works in ways that mine will never. But for me, I have just learned that whatever I put into my kitchen is what I'm going to get out of it. So if I put very little effort into planning, then my stress level is going to be way higher. My frustration is going to be way higher. My joy in this task is going to be way lower. And all around, everybody's just going to be less nourished and less pleased. And I can't help but to point out the irony in this full circle moment, because as I said, I was studying business management. I did end up getting my degree in that, and then I was in the workforce for 6 years, and then finally got to become a full-time homemaker. And I can honestly look back and say, wow, these different jobs that I worked are now helping me to better manage my home, and things that I picked up from different experiences along the way, I can now incorporate into the systems that I have here. And I just want to leave you with that and remind you that even in the waiting, God is still working. And even if you are not where you want to be right now, there's a great chance that He is refining something in you that will be used later on. So I hope you find that encouraging, and I hope you have a great day wherever you're at. I'll catch you next time. Bye, guys.